This is how I closed 15 plus deals in 1 month with no team or any money. I want to break down how this journey exactly got started from my first deal with this buyer and how I created hundreds of thousands with one buyer. In the beginning of my journey, this was right around when I closed my first deal and had my first fix and flip in progress. I was in my office and I invited some friends to the office, and he had some other friends that he wanted to bring to the office. So they were trying to make some calls on their own, but they were really having some time to learn how to do that. Probably took them a long time to get their first acquisitions deal. Most of them did quit, but one guy of the friends of friends that came into the office actually did try wholesaling in the past while he was in high school. But while he was in high school, he didn't get to close a deal, but he got to learn the experience of getting a deal under contract and trying to hunt down to find a buyer. So when he hunted down to find a buyer, he found a buyer who wanted to buy the deal that I had in Toledo, Ohio. When I got this deal under contract, I actually had it as an all-cash deal. I didn't know how to structure the deal, but when Brandon had this buyer, we presented him the deal. It had to be restructured because he actually wanted it on seller financing. So I had him help me get on the phone with the seller and renegotiate the transaction. Now I'm learning how he actually ran numbers, began to think about the deal, and the reason it's called creative financing is you can be as creative as you want. He set up this transaction where he'd be losing a few hundred a month for tax benefits because he had a gator business which was lending out earnest money deposits to other wholesalers and other buyers and different things, and he wanted to offset his taxes. So with this asset, he was able to do that, but he also, it was a 2-property package where he bought one creative finance and one cash to set it up in a way where one property made money, one lost money, and it kind of equaled out. Now he's going to set up a 5-year amortization with the seller where it's going to be completely paid off in equity, and he'll own this house free and clear for $30 to $40K. So this was my first learning lesson with this buyer on actually selling a deal to him. So I hunted down this seller, direct to seller, cold calling for months and months. It was one of my original leads from a tired landlord in Toledo, Ohio. You can get a list like that from Batch Leads or Deal Sauce, things like that. So that's how I got my first deal done with him. Used Brandon as the connector of a buyer and got him paid on that. So what relationships and creativity of putting multiple people together is what helped get this first deal done with him. I didn't do any more deals with him for quite a long time. So about 6 months later, I had found a wholesaler named Vara who actually had a sub-2 deal for sale. And I was reconnecting with my buyer who was starting to buy more properties again, and I started talking to him about what he wanted. So I sent this deal to the buyer, and it was his first sub-2 deal, and it was my first sub-2 deal. So now he's helping us learn multiple different types of transactions. So utilizing different relationships in Pace Morby's free community, plus Brandon's past relationship on the deal to push this forward. So now that we got this house with Vara, sold it to him, we made like a few thousand. So we sold him that first deal January 2023, and then we're in June. So now in June, I started realizing this guy has access to a lot of money. He's telling me he wants to buy 5, 10, 20 deals in 1 month. I'm like, how do I get this guy more deals? When I started talking to Vara, he told me he found this deal through direct to agent. Direct to agent was reaching out to realtors who have low equity listings and have maybe lower interest rates and the seller's losing money on the sale. So we're helping benefit them by using subject to, where we take over their mortgage and set up a wraparound mirror loan where we're making the payments on the loan and we have the ownership. So great thing about having the loan and ownership as two separate pieces of paper is that they can be separated. We don't need to be approved for any bank's credit approvals or any income checks. I really was working all day long, 8 to 12 hours a day, to figure out how do I get this guy more deals. Since he was busy raising money all day and finding more people to give him the money to buy these deals, we were working on hunting down more wholesalers, more agents to find these deals for us. Now we have our two key strategies that I switched from my direct to seller business to direct to agent and direct to wholesaler. Utilizing this method, this buyer was buying creative deals nationwide, all 50 states, highly populated or rural, doesn't matter. At any interest rate, he would consider if he can get it at the right low enough down payment. Or if it was a lower interest rate, he'd give a higher down payment. So that's kind of how his math worked. So once I kind of figured out how his math worked, I was consistently calling him every night as I found like 5 to 20 new wholesalers a day who sent me some good ones, some shitty ones, and I just take the pile of deals and present him all the deals that I got. So a majority of my deals did go to him, but I did have access to other buyers by continuously searching for more great people who had access to money like this, so I can create multiple flows of the deals that got turned down and pass those off to different buyers. I was able to sell 5 deals alone just to this one buyer here, but I had to call direct to agent consistently, making 50, 100 plus calls a day on that. I really had to focus in on mixing in direct to wholesaler as well as the direct to agent, because direct to agent deals took me sometimes 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get to the finish line, when I could get a direct to wholesaler who already has this deal under contract. When they have this deal under contract, all I got to get them to do is agree to JV, add my fee on top, and if they say no to that, maybe I can get the buyer to pay me directly outside of that and just send him the deal and send him the relationship of the contact if he really liked the deal. There was different ways I could set up the structure of the deals with the wholesalers I found and the buyer, so I could ensure I make money on every deal. Sometimes there wasn't really any money on the deal, so I tried working out an equity position in the deal where I was trying to get in on the wraparound financing, where they were trying to sell it to another homestead investor to, if they got it at 4%, sell it at 8%. So we tried to do that on a few different transactions, and it didn't fully work out with him because he didn't have the best management skills, which we'll get into later. Maybe if you find the right buyer who actually can guarantee that they're reputable and can get the deals to the finish line after they buy it, that could work. I wasn't able to maximize on that, but we were still able to maximize on JVing with a wholesaler, adding our fee on top or getting paid directly from the buyer if they weren't allowing add fee on top or JV, depending on the relationship. That is how I was finding the deals and dealing with them for the first few months of consistently selling them 5 deals a month. After 5 months, he stopped buying deals. So on the final month, he was kept on pushing closings to not close on transactions right away because it took him some time to raise the money. So he was starting to get slower on raising money because his lack of management. But he still ended up closing on his last 15 transactions with me. He was able to try to wrap them, which he did wrap some of them he didn't, which could have been the greatest learning lesson for him in his journey. He ended up buying 120 plus properties in this first year of real estate. It's pretty crazy on how he was able to do that with consistent action and being able to raise so much money. a lot of different wholesalers were utilizing him in the business. On a deal I was working on with him, he didn't close on a transaction and he couldn't raise the money on time. But the seller and realtor really had to close on the deal. So I learned how to raise money myself. So this is when I bought my first subject to deal. I tried to wrap it on a deal, but I had to buy it and then resell it to that end buyer to save that situation. There was another situation where it's a little more unique, where some people can kind of ruin a relationship with the buyer. I met a wholesaler who was reaching out to me because he was doing deals with the same buyer as me. And he knew I did deals with that buyer as well. For some reason, they had some anger issues or emotional issues and cut each other off, and the buyer didn't want anything to do with the transactions involved with that wholesaler. That wholesaler came to me to send deals to this buyer. He wanted me to pay him outside of the closing, put the contracts in my name, but sell the deals to the buyer, because he knew this buyer would pay so much. When you ever find a relationship that a buyer pays so much or is out competing all the buyers, make sure you're utilizing it while you can, because they might not be there forever. All these opportunities are right here in front of us. So I'd recommend going on Facebook groups, making posts, making comments, reaching out to these people, building these relationships where these wholesalers can come to you or you can go to them and build solid, good relationships long term. Like I was able to do with this buyer, selling him over 27 deals over a 9-month time frame. So now I'd recommend, if you want more info on how to actually do it, check out my free course where it's breaking down how you can actually get started with doing connecting, where you find these wholesalers and want to get involved in transactions where you might have buyers already who will buy these deals, but you're just not hunting, looking, and searching. Or I might buy these deals personally, so if you have any deals in Detroit, we might fix and flip them if they make sense. Everything will be on a case-by-case scenario. We'll also consider commercial deals or single-family in landlord-friendly states where the population's good and they're cash flowing on day one, or potentially we'll consider value adds. You can send us your deals here and potentially we'll buy them, or if we don't buy them, you can also send your deals here for us to JV on them. Let's figure out where we can make money together so we can collaborate and grow together, and maybe you'll close 15 deals in 1 month. But you have to actually stay consistent in the action taking and see where life takes you with staying focused and overcoming all the hurdles that will come along in this journey.